My reaction to 9/11 really began and ended with my right knee. It was the beginning of March, and I was 19 years old playing in my first college lacrosse game. I went to cut, and my cleat just stuck in the ground, and there went my ACL ligament. And it was a big deal. I mean, I dropped out of school for the semester, flew home to Philadelphia from Los Angeles, had reconstructive surgery on my knee, I was limping around for weeks. But eventually I went back to Los Angeles and stayed there most of the summer. But the whole time I had to make these trips back and forth from LA to Philadelphia to get checked out. And on the morning of September 10th, I was down in Philadelphia getting my knee looked at by an orthopedic surgeon. But later that day, I drove up to New York City to see my dad, who was working at Bloomberg News. And I can remember sitting at my computer, a few weeks earlier, trying to book that trip and thinking, maybe I should stay an extra day. But I didn't. So when the first plane hit, I was asleep on a pull-out couch in a very sparsely furnished Los Angeles apartment. I remember the phone ringing, and one of my friends whose father owns a PR firm in Washington, D.C., right by the Pentagon, was on the phone, and he's a really kind of like hysterical, reactionary guy to begin with, and him just yelling into the receiver, "We're under attack, we're under attack, we're going to war." There was more than a little hysteria in Los Angeles. A lot of people were worried that planes were going to come and attack LA, and I think it was at that point that my kind of East Coast elitism showed through a little bit. I mean, I said to my friends, like, you don't have to worry about it. There's absolutely no way we're going to get bombed. And they looked at me like I was nuts, and I said, well, what are they going to bomb? Disneyland? It's not exactly a national security risk if the teacup ride gets hit. And I just felt so helpless. I mean, that whole 19-year-old's perspective of the world where you don't think anything can hurt you had already been torn to pieces along with my ACL. And then on top of that, I was on the other side of the country and I couldn't even talk to my parents. I couldn't find out if my dad was alright. And I didn't know what to do. I started playing these weird mind games with myself, thinking, well, what if you had flown back a day later? What if you'd been on one of those planes? You could have done something. And then I'd kind of think, no, you idiot, you would have read Sky Mall and fallen asleep in 2 minutes like you always do and probably slept through the whole thing. And it wasn't really a rational train of thought, but then again, they weren't exactly rational times. And I remember maybe 4 or 5 days after the 11th, I was driving back from the freeway to our college, and I went up this road that I'd gone up literally hundreds of times, and I'd always kind of noticed that there was this Army recruiting station just off the right in this little strip mall, and it had never even really registered with me before, but I think for the first time I kind of looked at it as a viable option. So I pulled up and I went in. I can't tell you what the recruiting officer said to me. I have no idea. There was just a million thoughts flying through my head at once. I'm going to have to drop out of school again. I'm going to have to tell my parents that I'm leaving. I'm going to have to pack up my things. Where am I going to put them? All this stuff. And it was just a whirlwind. And then all of a sudden there was this kind of moment of clarity. And I looked up and said to him, I've recently had reconstructive knee surgery. Is that going to be a problem? And that was pretty much the end of the interview. So that was pretty much my reaction to 9/11. Intense feelings of helplessness coupled with anger. And then I tried to run off and join the Army.